Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Smile. Today's guest is Ryan Bailey. Ryan is a 52-year-old sober human who started his sobriety journey over 19 years ago. Getting sober at 33, Ryan knows what it takes to experience life's ups and downs without anything to numb the edges. However, despite facing adversity both before and after getting sober, Ryan has continued to show up for his recovery by doing the work and helping others. I'm always inspired by people with decades of sobriety, and every time I've had the opportunity to hear Ryan speak, I've always taken away pearls of wisdom. So, without any pressure, I'm really excited to kick off today's conversation. Without any further delay, Ryan, welcome to Behind the Smile. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks, Ash. Appreciate you having me.
I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you for agreeing to come on the show.
No, look, I think you might have asked me a couple of years ago, and I was like,
Yeah.
But here I am.
And then that's it.
Yep.
Time changes things, which is beautiful. How's your morning been so far?
Relaxing. I did a couple of hours work this morning, but then walked down by the beach for a little while, had a bite to eat.
Nice. Because we don't live too far from each other, which is awesome.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love that. Well, I want to dive into the conversation today, starting with some nice, easy questions. This is what we do at the start of every episode, and our audience love to know. So where do you live? What does an average day look like? And what do you do for fun?
Okay, so I live in East St Kilda. Average day, if I'm working, it usually about 4 to 6 hours, depending on how many clients I have. I currently work mental health support work, so it's sort of up to me how often I work and how many hours. Usually get up around about 7:30, have a walk, have a bite to eat, feed my cat, have a bit of a play with him, and head off to work. And I come home intermittently during the day just to sort of step in and have a bite to eat, as I said, and play with the cat again.
I'm sure your cat loves it. You can come home.
Every chance I can, I like to go down by the beach and I'll walk for an hour and a half. I'll sit, I'll meditate, I'll talk to people on the phone. I'm a good phone caller. I like being on the phone and talking to people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you always been like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I like to reach out to people regularly. But mind you, I'll still have several hours here and there where I just want to do nothing and I don't want any human contact, especially with work. Sometimes that gets a little bit too much for me.
I can imagine it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot dealing with people every day who have complex mental health issues, speaking to other sober humans on the phone. It's I don't want to say heavy, but it's a lot to hold.
Yeah, and that's kind of been my default position where I will hold on to that stuff and I'll be drawn to people with those kinds of issues. So it's a way of sort of vicariously living a life without having to look at my stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a default.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is that something that you've done from a young age?
I don't know, but it's certainly something I've done since I've been sober. So I'm conscious of the fact that I'm always drawn to people that seem to have a bit of drama. So I'm trying to change that.
It's that rescuer mentality, right?
Yes and no. It's kind of, I think for a little while it was trauma bonding, but then then it was a comfort thing. I know this. Like, I know this.
And I can help you.
Yeah, I can sit with you. I can meet you where you are. Okay, I can be that calm, reassuring voice. The frustrating thing for me is that often, I was attracting people who didn't want to change.
Who wanted to stay stuck in the stuff so that they could,
So we'd talk it to death, and then I'd, instead of having the tough phone call, I'd start, ghosting them. And it's kind of funny that I found myself currently doing what I'm doing because I have this conversation regularly with people that are close to me. I think, have I just found a way to professionally do what I've always done, and that is take on other people's energy? But I think these days I bring a completely different mindset to it. I'm in a different place. I can walk away from it a lot easier. I don't take it on board like I might have once did. I see their illness for what it is. And it's not about me. But there have been plenty of times in my life where I felt that I needed to be that emotional regulator for someone.
And it takes a toll, doesn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
And you mentioned that you love to get down by the water, spend time there. Is that many sober humans who I speak to have some sort of morning routine, but you mentioned that sometimes happens in the middle of the day. Is that kind of your quote unquote morning routine that you do sort of any time of day?
See, it depends on my clientele, but at the moment I'll duck out at 9 o'clock to see someone. I usually spend 1 to 2 hours with him depending on how he's travelling, and then it's often a couple of hours before I've got someone else. So I'm straight, any chance I can, I'm straight down by the water, especially on the nicer days. It's kind of like a levelling moment for me, and I just love looking at the water. And the thing about living around here, and I've been here for, I think, since 2011, so I was at 14 years, I'm always seeing people I know.
Yeah.
And there's something about walking along the water or down by St Kilda there, and you see someone you know, even if it's just a hello, it just changes my day. And it's a complete change from the way that I used to be. You know, I'd see someone I think I might know, and I'd be crossing the street, hoping they don't see me.
Yeah.
And wondering what they were thinking of me or talking about me and all that sort of stuff.
Oh my gosh, I relate to that so much. All right, I feel like we've got a lot to dive into. But
Yep.
before we go any further, Ryan, I'd love to talk about your photo. So I've asked you to bring in a photo today from a time in your life where you were hiding behind a smile. So you were presenting one version of yourself to the outside world, but the reality was you were struggling internally. So could you please describe for our listeners what the photo is that we're looking at right now? I'll bring it up on the screen. For those who are listening and can't see the photo, what are we looking at and what was going on for you at that time in your life?
The photo was taken at a house party of someone I'd never met before. I was just dragged along there by a woman that I was seeing at the time. And it was just one of those, she had a camera, she took the photo. It's just one of those moments in time where I look back on, and I'd just come back from a trip to London a few months earlier, and that was when my drinking in particular had become a real issue for me. I thought I had a problem before I went over there. If anywhere in the world is going to highlight that kind of a problem, it is London. And I came home and I lasted a couple of months and thought, you know what, I've got to do something here. I've got to stop. And I swore that I was going to stop drinking. And, within days I said, hey, you. And I just sort of latched onto this person, and it would have only been a few weeks. It wasn't that long, maybe longer. I'm not sure, but I drank pretty quickly because that night in particular I was presenting as this easygoing, calm sort of person. But really, what was going on for me was I was being attacked from all corners. The environment was killing me. I felt completely uncomfortable in a social. Sorry, is that Frank?
Sorry, Frankie's about to jump up on you.
Completely uncomfortable in social circles without any alcohol in my system, and I sort of like I was with someone for the sake of being with someone.
Right.
And so once my drinking started again, that didn't really last that long.
Yeah. Well, tell me, when you went to London and you said that's really where it escalated, what were some of the consequences of that escalation? What did it look like?
There weren't any external consequences as such. It was just internally. When I went over there, I was concerned that I'd been drinking way, way too much. I knew. It was my parents were living over there at the time, and so I guess they got to maybe see a little bit more of it. But I just tested myself on a number of occasions. I said, look, I'm going to try and see if I can do this. I'll go in for 2 drinks. Yeah, control drinking. And I just kept failing miserably. And there was one particular night where I went to Planet Hollywood. G.I. Jane, the movie, had just come out. And I went to Planet Hollywood in Leicester Square, and it was about midday. I said, I'll go in for 1 or 2 drinks. And they had these drinks called G.I. Janes. It was promotion. I don't know what was in it, but the lady behind the bar said there was some competition among the staff members about who can sell the most. And I looked at her and said, I'll help you.
We're going to win this.
Yeah, I'll do it. Thinking that she'd appreciate this, but she wasn't really paying attention, And I crawled out of there about 11 hours later. And I was only going in for 1 or 2 drinks, and I remember walking across to McDonald's across the way, and I walked in and I just yelled at the top of my voice, "I'm an alcoholic!"
Really?
And then I spent the rest of the time I was in London looking over my shoulder thinking that everyone I passed was in that McDonald's on that night. Because, of course, 3 days later I was back onto it again. I was in Paris and, you know.
Because that's what you do, right?
Yeah.
When you have those feelings that are too uncomfortable to sit with, the only thing you know how to do if you identify as being an alcoholic is to drink again.
Yeah.
Wow. So what brought you back to Australia?
I was really only there visiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you came back to your life here. You mentioned that you hooked up with this girl because there was, I suppose, you didn't want to be alone. Is that correct? Or
it's about looking normal.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah, so it's about, I need to look as normal as possible because I already feel enough like a freak.
Yeah.
So if I can look normal, I'll be okay. And what I didn't realise, and what it's taken me a long time to see, is that, because don't feel normal here inside, I don't always attract the best people for me. And I really didn't have a clue. And it wasn't based on anything in particular. I just wanted to look the part.
Yeah. And so was there a particular type of partner that you were attracting?
No.
Did you find that you attracted heavy drinkers?
Well, I guess. But to be honest, there wasn't a lot of that going on anyway. I mean, between drink and the way I was feeling inside, there really wasn't a lot of dating or relationships going on at all, to be honest. I just had too much stuff going on.
Yeah, I understand that. It becomes all-consuming in so many ways. Ryan, you spoke just then about this feeling of I'm not normal, I don't fit in, I need to look the part. When did that feeling start? What's your first memory of that?
When wasn't it?
Right.
As long as I can remember. I've always felt that. And there was something that happened in my childhood that changed everything. Mm-hmm. And it was a secret that I held on to for so many years and kept everything inside. And I sat there and I suffered in a lot of pain. And there just wasn't a time when I thought I had this or felt normal or anything like that. No, there wasn't.
Yeah. Did you feel like you could talk to your parents, or was it something that was just an internal struggle?
Well, I did talk to my parents at first. Well, I guess it comes back to sort of what I told you I wanted to talk about, because I did talk to my parents at first, and but very quickly as doctors started telling me there was nothing wrong with me, or they didn't believe me, or this isn't a thing, I just shut down and that was it.
So this is when we were speaking offline before the interview, you did open up and share with me you were around 8 years old when you started to experience.
Yeah, so I was about 9 years old, I worked out. So I was 1981. 1981 at school was great. I remember I was in grade 3 and playing with my Rubik's Cube and Lego and footy cards and riding my BMX bike, reading lots and lots of books. I mean, reading books was a huge part of my childhood at that point. And then somewhere along the way, I just remember this one day, I was watching TV in the corner of the TV cabinet was hurting my eye. And I thought, that's weird. It was just like this stabbing effect. So I put something over the top of it and went about my day, and then the coffee table. And then next thing I was noticing, like the Rubik's Cube, which I'd held my Rubik's Cube every day. Like back then that was like, it was the new big thing, Rubik's Cubes. Everyone had one. You carried it everywhere. And suddenly I couldn't look at it. And what it was anything with a pointy tip, anything with a sharp edge. I had this stabbing effect in my eye. So it might have been a foot or two away from me, but for me it was touching my eye and pushing forward into the retina, basically. It's a stabbing sensation.
And is that painful?
Incredibly painful.
Wow.
It's hard to describe the pain, but it's an actual physical pain. It's like it is stabbing you in the eye. And sometimes it's just like, ooh, like that. But other times it's, oh.
Right.
And it's, as I said, it started in 1981. And at first I didn't think anything of it because I didn't know it was abnormal.
Yeah.
So I told my parents, and they said, well, after a while, when they could see I was putting stuff on the corners of everything just to protect my eyes, they started, well, okay, well, we'll see a doctor. And the doctor shook his head and said, nothing I know about, but we'll send you to another doctor. And we did that. And, when you get that sense that people aren't believing you, I don't know what it was. There was nothing in particular that made me think that, but I just had this feeling.
Sense.
And so I was reading an eye chart, and I deliberately got the eye chart wrong, just hoping they'd take it seriously. But I mean, ironically, that really had nothing to do with my condition. But I think what they also did is it probably made them think, oh, he's bunging this one on.
Yeah.
He's bunging this on. And I remember the moment we were driving home from the doctor. We were turning from Bladen Street into Whitaker Avenue in Laverton North. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I said to myself, I am never going to say another word about this. And for 25 years, I pretty much didn't say another word about it. And every single day for those 25 years, I encountered thousands and thousands of objects, the corners of furniture, the tips of pens, tree branches, papers, anything with a pointy tip that was stabbing me in the eye hundreds of times a day. And I just took it.
Oh, my goodness.
And I didn't say anything. And wherever possible, I try to do things like contort my body. And it's crazy. I've been doing stuff like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
And
trying to cover your
just
eyes.
cover the eyes. And because I couldn't tell anyone. I couldn't say, hey, that's bothering me, because my go-to reaction in life, and I think even before this, my go-to reaction in life was to, as soon as I got some resistance, I'd deer in headlights, shut down, hold everything in, and this just inability to say what I needed or wanted.
Yeah.
And I really think that preceded this event, but this event just exacerbated all of that. And all through primary school, high school, early working life, every single day, just constantly being poked in the eye by anything and everything around me, blacking out, time blindness, it was insidious. And there'd be episodes that would last for, if I had to sit in a classroom for, like, I was stuck there. I was just stuck there, and I'd take it. But there'd be episodes that might only last for a few seconds and stuff like that. And so I'd get relief as soon as I was able to remove the object from my line of sight. I'd get relief. But here's the kicker with this thing. It's called sharp edge eye syndrome. And here's the kicker with this is that, when I shut my eyes, I can still see it.
No.
Yep. So I can shut my eyes and the object is still coming at me, stabbing me. And it might only be for a few seconds. But the relief doesn't come straight away. I've had it last as long as probably 5-10 minutes, where it's just continually going at me even when I shut my eyes. I've had nights where I've dreamt, like the Rubik's Cube is my nemesis now, and I've had nights where I've dreamt it just stabbing me, and I've woken up in like pain with my hands over my eyes, but I can still see it and feel it. So it's not just looking at the image or the actual object itself; it's imagining it that still causes the pain.
So there's some sort of neurological type element to this.
Yep. Well, we don't really know. We don't know, and this was my problem. It's only in very recent years that people have started to look at it. But for those 25 years, I think I got drunk once at the football, and I said something to a mate, but that was just in passing. And there was a moment in my 20s when I was having dinner at a restaurant with my dad, and I moved a menu that was bothering my eyes. And he just looked at me and he said, "Oh, when you did that, that reminded me of the time when you had that problem with your eyes." And I looked at him and I said, "Dad, that never went away." And although I've never spoken to him about that moment, the look on his face, you could just tell it was like, the light bulb went off. That's what's wrong. Like, that's why his life is so all over the place, because it affected my ability to stay places. Every room I walked into, I'd have to place, strategically place things on top of things, or, okay, I can't sit there, so I'll sit over here, but you might be there, but I'm going to look there. it was just insane. And the fact that no one ever commented, like, are you okay or what's going on? I just thought I was just getting away with it, and maybe I was, or maybe they just looked at me and thought,
that's just Ryan.
Yeah,
he's a bit of an oddball. Or
Yeah.
Right.
And but every single environment had the potential to hurt me.
And I imagine that it must have really kept you quite disconnected from people, because if your sole focus in any space is trying to protect yourself from feeling physical pain, how could you possibly let down your guard enough to be able to connect with another human?
I had no, hence saying that there wasn't a lot of dating and relationships going on, for instance. I mean, I couldn't. I tried to connect as best I could and be part of, the kids at school and, and the golf club and stuff like that, because I played a lot of golf as a kid. But no, that ability to connect, especially when I was being triggered, I couldn't focus on anything else. I often couldn't hear what was being said, and all the time having that dialogue with myself, like, why do I do this to myself? Why can't I move? Why don't I just say something? No, I can't say something, and it was just crazy. But I was just trapped. I was 100% trapped in it. And it took, well, I will say alcohol is the only thing that I found numbed the effect.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
What did that do for you?
So it numbed the effect. So when I was drinking. I wasn't thinking about anything. I wasn't noticing it. And I suppose it's an anesthetic. It's just like any other painkiller. How many people go out and they break a bone or something when they're drunk and they're not feeling it?
I did that.
Yep. See? and they sober up the next day and they go, right?
Yeah.
So this was exactly the same phenomenon. And I'd wake up the next morning and it would be worse than ever, because hangovers, they suck at the best of times.
Yeah, and it exacerbates any pain in the body.
And the thing with this condition is that stress and lack of sleep exacerbate the sensation. Ooh. So obviously drinking as hard as I did and as often as I did was not healthy for that condition. So I'd not only be dealing with the hangover and the shame and the guilt and remorse of what I'd done the night before, but I'd also, be finding everything in the room was just killing me. And on that note, it's kind of like once my parents realised that the eye thing was still around, suddenly all their furniture was rounded. Yeah, like those. And Mum had a tissue box next to her chair, and she put a doily over the top of it just to protect my eyes.
Oh, bless.
Yeah, so that was a real sanctuary for me for a long time, because the workplaces were horrible.
Yeah,
they were horrible, and I'd often find myself in stressed work environments. Particularly one job I stayed at for a long time, where it was quite stressful, and I was dealing with a lot of angry people, and all the time I was being stabbed in the eye by the desks, the pens around it, post-it notes. I remember one time, this is crazy. So I'd had enough one day and I said, no more post-it notes. Send me a text message, send me an email. And they said to me, but you don't answer emails. Oh, I don't care, just no more post-it notes. And I came back from lunch and there were 100 post-it notes on my desk.
Oh no.
But it was out of context. See, they didn't know, and
course.
No one knew. And I just lacked the ability. I mean, I just froze. I couldn't say what I needed or wanted at the best of times, let alone talk about this. And so I got sober. Basically what happened was I stopped drinking and I went to rehab. And 2 days into rehab, we had a group therapy session, and they put a tissue box in the middle of the room, of the group, and I was like, oh, God. And like the counsellor's over there and I'm looking over here. And she says, look at me, Ryan, look at me. She was just hard as nails, like lovely on the inside, hard as nails on the outside. And I was like, I looked at her and I looked away and looked away. And eventually it was just too much. I mean, without any alcohol in my system, trapped, I said, look, that bothers me. And she just put a smile on her face and said, right, we'll just move it. And I was like, that's all I had to say? That's all I had to say?
Right.
But then she said, okay, now focus on me. And I'm looking at her and she's asking me questions. And then she says to me, why are you eyeballing me? I said, what do you mean? you're eyeballing me. And I said, no, I'm looking you in the eye because that's the polite thing to do. She said, no, you're eyeballing me. I'm like, what? And it reminded me of what my dad used to always say to me, that when I got drunk, I got this mean look in my eye, and which I never understood. And I now get it. I'd been holding everything inside, that it was coming out through my eyes. And she said to me, Ryan, blink. And then before the group session was over, she said to everyone, okay, you have permission at any given time to tell Ryan to blink.
How good is rehab?
So, but again, it was the eyes.
Yes.
And it's crazy that the thing that was causing me the most pain was also what was screaming the most, and I didn't know this. And so for the next 28 days, I was regularly being told to blink. But it's because I'd just been holding everything inside. And so she took me aside and she said to me, look, what's going on? And I for the first time this was 2006, so it was the first time since 1981, I told someone about the problem, properly told them. And she said, well, why don't we get some help? And I said, okay. And I said, do you think someone can help me? She said, well, why don't you find out? It's time. Like, you've suffered enough. And so I got out of rehab and I started seeing these different doctors, and every single one of them didn't believe me. They said I was making it up. They said it's not a thing. They said, yeah, that sounds horrible, but it's probably something this or that. And then one lady, she was lovely. She said, look, I'm not even going to charge you. Like, I don't know what this is. I can't help you. I'm not even going to charge you.
Wow.
And I walked out and I was like, why do I bother? So I just decided to focus on getting sober and staying sober and just put up with it again. And for about 5 years, just short of 5 years, that's what I did. I just put up with it. And somehow my life was getting better. I mean, I was sober, I was happy. There was a lot of good stuff going on there. But I was still putting up with this thing every day. And then I tried, it was probably, I don't know, at some point I decided it was time to try dating sober. And it ended spectacularly bad. And I thought, I got whatever's wrong with me. So I went back to a psychologist, and 3 sessions in, she said to me, Ryan, what's wrong with your eyes? I said, what? She said, Ryan, I watch you. You come in here, you take your wallet out of your pocket, you put it on the corner of this desk. I'm sitting over here, but you're looking over there. When you do look at me, it's very brief, and then you look away. What's wrong with your eyes? So at this point, it's 30 years since I first started feeling it, and it's the first time someone has challenged me. And I said, oh, don't worry about it, you can't help me. She said, well, even if I can't help you, she said, it may help me to understand you. And so I talked to her about it, and she said, leave this with me, let me think about it. And the next session, I came back and she said, look, I don't know what it is, but it could be a self-defense mechanism. It could be your brain alerting you to all the dangers in the rooms, but I don't know. To be honest, it's the fact that it's physically hurting you as opposed to a phobia. But what we need to do is settle you down. And she gave me specific instruction that I had to slow everything in my life down. And at that point, I was working 10-hour days, and she said, too much. You need to start the day slowly. You need to work your way into it. You need to you walk at half the pace, talk at half the pace, just do everything slower. And I said, why? And she said, because your environment is overwhelming and you're heightened to all the threats around you. So we need to get you to relax into your environment. I said, will that make the pain go away? And she said, probably not. But we need you to get you to relax. And she asked if I could swim. And I said, well, yes. And she said, well, try swimming. And, of course, being as self-conscious as I was, I thought I'm not a good swimmer. So a friend of mine who was a qualified swim instructor came out, and she came out to Werribee and she watched me swim a lap. And she said, Ryan, there's nothing wrong with your stroke, but you're not breathing. I said, well, what do you mean? I take a breath every 2 strokes. And she said, no, you gasp for breath. Breathing is an inhale, exhale experience. You need to blow bubbles into the water. And at that point I realised that I probably hadn't blown bubbles since I was like 7 years old. And when I told my psychologist this, she said, Ryan, you're going to start blowing bubbles into life. And it was like, breathe, breathe, breathe. Just like whatever you do, I don't care how you look, just breathe. In, out, deep breathing. And after about 2 months of that, I started to notice a huge difference. And I was still in pain every day, but I wasn't up here.
Heightened.
Yeah, and I was as relaxed as I think I'd ever been in my life. And as fate would have it, and I tell this story because it meant a lot to me. I was walking down Chapel Street one day, and I came across an internet cafe. And I went inside, and I don't know what it was. Every now and then you just get that voice in your head. And I Googled airline tickets to New York, and it was such a cheap price. And it was a really cheap price, but I didn't know that. But I remember thinking, I didn't know travel was so cheap. And I bought the ticket. And then I thought, what the hell have I done? Like, I don't make decisions like this. My life is small. And I thought, well, I don't know, I'll tell my parents. They'll find a way to tell me that was wrong. Oh, no, they loved it. And I told my psychologist, and they're like, no, this is great. But I tell this story because what happened was about 3 weeks before I went away, I got really sick, which you can probably identify with. And I got really panicked that I wouldn't be able to enjoy this trip, and I could barely breathe, and I couldn't walk the length of a shopping centre, let alone, the streets of New York. And my psychologist was like, no, this is fantastic. And she said to me, what I want you to do, because you're already starting to feel better, you've got a full day on the plane. I want you to spend that whole time like just sitting there and breathing and thinking about how far you've come in your life. And I was like, okay. So that's exactly what I did. I didn't watch any entertainment. I chatted briefly to the guy next to me, and there was a lady on the other side of him who got drunk the whole trip, so that was a little entertaining.
How sober were you at this stage?
5.5 years to the day. And I sat there for the whole flight to LA, so the 15 hours to LA and then another 5 hours, whatever it is, to New York.
Yeah.
And I just did nothing but breathe and reflect, breathe, breathe, breathe. That's all I did. And then when I got off the plane in New York, I walked out into the terminal and I was just overwhelmed. I just started crying. And I cried and I cried. I joke I cried around New York because that's exactly what I did. It was like this cathartic journey, and I don't know what called me there, but being there was just, it was 10 days of just crying, smiling and crying. And I probably hadn't cried like that ever. And I needed it. All that breathing on the aeroplane, all that, it had brought something out. I'd been holding on to everything my entire life, and it just brought it all out. And there I was, and a mentor of mine was living in Los Angeles at the time, and so I touched base with him, and he couldn't believe I was there. He was like, "What do you mean?" Like he just because, and then he started to tell me about this, deer in headlights, scared kid that he'd met 5 years earlier. When the first time I'd actually asked him to help him, he was just like surprised that I could even speak. And every time I talked to him on the phone each day, he'd say something like that, and I'd cry again. And the last day, I was due to come home, and I rang him and I said, I'm not going to cry. And we had the conversation. Okay, so you go home today? Yep, no worries, all that sort of stuff. And just as I was about to hang up, he said to me, remember, getting on that plane was the bravest thing you ever did. I got on the phone and I just bawled He got me. Because even though he didn't even know about the eye problem, I'd never told him, right? But he knew there was something broken in me. And he knew that the person he met does not do something like that. And that trip really changed me. And the eye problem never went away.
Wow.
It took another 5 years to really start talking broadly about that with people. But for a long time, that just having had that experience of breathing, letting it out, it was enough. It was enough. And then it was time to start talking about it and just saying, hey, that hurts me and stuff like that. And I got a lot of weird looks. People just don't get it. No. They don't get it. They really don't. And then one day I met someone like me.
You're joking.
No.
Stop.
Yeah.
Did you search them out? No.
No, I met someone like me. She was my Pilates instructor. And we were all sitting around after a session one day and she just happened to mention something. And I said, oh, yeah, I got that. That hurts. And she goes, no, you don't understand. She goes, it really hurts. And I said, I know it really hurts.
Oh, my God. What a God job.
And we started talking and we realised that we both knew exactly what that was like. And she was like, and stress and sleep? Yeah, stress and lack of sleep. And she's talking about all the things that trigger. Yep. And then she went and told her mum that she'd met someone like her, and her mum said, well, you're not the only freak. That's good to hear. And it was quite that moment. And then I did something I'd never done. I Googled it.
Oh, so you'd never self-researched?
Well, the internet wasn't a thing.
Right.
It wasn't a thing. So
it was dial-up back then.
Yeah, there was no internet.
Yeah.
Like in 1981, there was no internet.
No, of course.
So I Googled it. And then there was this online forum of people who were screaming about it and who had and no one was believing them. Doctors were not believing them. And I was like, wow. And some people were saying, I'm the only person who has this because they felt so lonely about it. And I got it. And it was like, there's all these people out there who have been complaining about this for years and doctors telling them they're full of it. And it was just one of those crazy moments where I was like, wow.
What did that feel like to find a community and that sense of, oh my goodness, I'm not alone and I'm not crazy?
At first it was a little bit, I was angry.
Right.
Yeah, that my first response was anger. Then it was like, I'm not crazy. But what really got me, after I think it was 2022 or 2021, a case study was done on it. Someone had decided they'd do a preliminary case study, and it was very basic. But I'd always complained. I'd always said those sharp edges bother me. Those sharp edges bother me, and my family always knew watch out for sharp edges. And they called it sharp edge eye syndrome in this case study, and I thought, whoa.
What the hell?
And then when I'm reading it and they're reading all the reports and the results and what people were saying about it, and with the exception of a few people that said they got associated migraines, I could have written that report myself. It happens, you can shut your eyes and still sense it. You can see it through TV screens, movies, TV shows. You can still see it. You can still get stabbed.
Oh, so if there is a sharp object on the screen.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
But the whole thing was like I could have written this myself. It was so accurate, and that was the moment. So I think I first read it about 2022, so it was about 6 months old. That was the moment when I really felt I'm not crazy. I'm not making this up.
I'm not making this
and
up.
It is as painful as I've been trying to tell people.
Yes.
And that case study sort of talked about the mental illness associated with it being off the charts. OCD, addiction. There was a lot of ADHD as well. Obsessive. I've done OCD, but it was just one of those moments. And since then, I just like, I don't know. It's like my whole life changed.
Wow. Does it make living with the condition somewhat easier in a way?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird though, because 50% of the time I'll say to someone, hey, can we move that? And then the rest of the time I won't. And it's sort of, you pick your moments, because it might be, it's only going to be for a few seconds. It's not worth having the conversation because people think I'm crazy anyway. It's not worth having the conversation. But then there's moments where I could move and I don't. And I'll say to myself afterwards, why did I do that to myself? Why did I do that to myself? And then I say, because I'm human. And it's just like, so it's like alcoholism. Like there are some days where I'm running better than others, where and if I'm if I'm not running well, then I just don't have the capacity to sort of like, self-care in that way to get up and move spots or something like that. And so I have a more caring approach to the way that I respond now. So if I don't move in that situation, or if I do just sit there and take it, I don't berate myself. I go, okay, well, you don't have to do that. And that was just a moment where you're probably not yourself, and leave it at that. And so the way that I treat myself about it has completely changed. I've reshaped it. I'm kinder, I'm gentler, and it's just one of those things that I deal with every day. And that's I mean, I still position myself in certain spots of certain rooms.
I've noticed that. Now, this is the first time as you said that, I've just realised that. Yeah, I'm just thinking about when we catch up sometimes on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And where you sit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Makes sense now.
There are, and there's a certain book that is often on a table, right, that I can't be in line of sight with.
Right.
So reading's one of those things. I used to love reading as a kid, but I couldn't after all. I've had spurts of reading here and there, but I have to hold the book in such a way that I'm blocking all the corners. And then when I'm turning the pages, I have to shut my eyes and turn the page. Oh. But then I get paranoid that I've turned 2 pages, so then I check the numbers and then the OCD kicks in. So I go through periods where I'd read and then I wouldn't read anything for, sometimes years. E-readers have been a fantastic invention.
I was going to say, the Kindle. I just got onto the Kindle before we went to Europe. My best friend Georgia was like, you've got to get a Kindle. I resisted it for years.
Yeah.
So I love the smell of books and the feeling. And anyway, it's been an absolute game changer.
Oh, they're fantastic. Yeah. They really are. And because I said I absolutely loved reading as a kid. Just loved it. And so that's it's interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I bought a book because my Kindle got stolen out of my car recently. So I thought I'll buy a book. Bugger it, I'll buy a book. And I was about 10 pages in. And I said, "This is not happening.
This is why I don't read books.
This is not happening."
Yeah.
So I gave the book away.
Nice.
But it's one of those things. The last 3 years of my life have definitely been the calmest by a long way. Yeah. And someone you and I both know, a woman named Naomi, I bumped into her at Coles in Ackland Street, New Year's Eve last year, and it was she just looked at me and she said, "Ryan, I've finally figured it out." And I said, "What have you figured out, Naomi?" I've been trying to work out what's different about you. And I said, "Well, what do you mean? What do you think's different about me?" And she said, "You're no longer walking around looking scared." And I asked her more about that, and she said, "Ryan, you're no longer walking around looking tortured." And if anyone could, that word had never really entered my vocabulary, but she captured how I felt all those years. She captured it. And the fact that, and she doesn't know about this. Yeah. So for her to notice that and to use that word, I mean, how palpable must have my energy have been? How obvious must have my pain have been? And that was one of those, it was New Year's Eve, and I was like, that's a good way to go into the new year. And,
absolutely.
And it was the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me without realising.
Because she's seen you.
Yeah.
She really sees you.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I echo it. I've seen your energy shift so much in the last few years. Even as we said at the top of the show, this wouldn't have happened 2-3 years ago. It's almost like you're getting, how when we get sober, we're promised the doors will open and life will get big, and, going to New York was probably the first expression of that. It's almost like this is a whole new experience of what the world has to offer and what you have permission to step into, what you feel like you have the freedom to step into now.
Yep. And I've deliberately, especially over the last 2 years, worked a very small schedule. I make enough to pay the bills, and I've just enjoyed, kind of going back to what my psychologist had me do all those years ago, living slowly and
Yes.
deliberately in that way, and just enjoying the peace and the calmness of it, and knowing that I don't have to put up with it if I don't need to, but also the way that I treat myself has completely changed. I just don't berate myself about it anymore. And I get to own it, and I get to say, Google it, because you Google it and it says.
Yes.
And there is just something really powerful about that. And back in 1981, and I've had doctors talk to me about this since, and they said they just didn't think about stuff like that, especially just a local suburban GP or whatever. They just don't think,
Of course, it's not in the training, it's not in the manual. They
just didn't, and they treated kids differently back then.
Yes.
And it's interesting because that my Pilates instructor, I said to her, how did you deal with it? Because it ruined my life. And she said, well, I just scream blue murder.
Every time she feels
She just told people.
Right.
And she said, well, I was in pain. Why wouldn't I tell people?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, it's like it's like saying alcoholism, right? It's not about alcohol, it's about our response to life, right? And it's that classic example of this where two completely different responses led to two completely different lives. Where she, and I know I don't want to look at her life from the outside with some sort of misnomer, but for all intents and purposes, more balanced, more honest, more open, more lighter and brighter, and the difference being that she was like, I'm in pain, I'm telling you. Whereas I held it all inside. And I think that is, and I see that a lot with my work, that the real pain is when they hold it inside.
Absolutely.
And that reaction to life is what I focus on today, is trying to just be a bit lighter and brighter and wear it like a loose garment. And it's just fascinating to see how two people with the same experience can have two completely different outcomes.
Absolutely. And I love, you've really nailed it, that I think for me it's about being able to express yourself and really talk to someone. It's part of the reason I started this podcast, because so much of my drinking I kept hidden because I didn't feel like I had permission. When I went into rehab, I didn't even think that I had any trauma. I only knew what I knew, and I thought that my life was incredibly privileged and blessed, and therefore I had no right to identify with or say that anything wasn't right. And so I bottled it all up, and it's like when we don't share these things, it destroys us, it kills us slowly.
Yeah.
But when you can just say, reach out, whether it's a friend, whether it's a mentor, whether it's anyone, just one person that you can share your stuff with, whatever you're going through. If you're listening along today and there's something that you are battling with internally, just try it out. Try sharing that with one other human being and feel the lightness, feel the weight of that lift. It's so, so powerful. And I love, Ryan, what you were sharing about with the breath. Yeah. As a breathwork facilitator, I go on and on and on about just how potent the breath is, and what she had you doing, which was that mindful breathing, becoming aware of your breath and focusing on the exhale, because that's the letting go. Blowing
bubbles into life.
Literally, right?
But that whole living in silence thing, my go-to response is that this preceded, this problem happening. My go-to response always was to, as soon as I was sort of felt any sort of resistance, shut down, deer in headlights, keep it all inside, inability. I mean, I as you can tell, I'm perfectly capable of forming a sentence. Right?
Absolutely.
But
that's what I mean. Every time you talk, I find you really fascinating to listen to.
Yep. But when it came to expressing my needs and my wants, I was always found wanting. I just couldn't do it. It was like this block, and I have theories on that, which probably don't need to go into now. But
can you share some?
Well,
if you feel comfortable.
Okay, so when I was really little, I had hearing issues, and so my hearing didn't develop the way it should have, and so I was speaking the way that I was hearing.
Right.
But no one else could understand a word I was saying, and I've listened to the cassette tapes from back in the day, and I don't know what I was saying. And then, they eventually worked out what the problem was. I got the speech therapy lessons, and sooner or eventually I was able to speak. But it's that old thing that by the time I could speak properly, the damage had been done.
Yeah.
It's like
that feedback that you were receiving, that there was something wrong with you.
The sensing the frustration of my parents, because they can't understand me, or not getting what I needed or wanted because they didn't know what I needed or wanted, and stuff like that. And so when the time came that I could actually articulate that, there was a pointlessness to it.
Wow.
And so that's my theory, whether it's real or not. I think
it's pretty spot on. Yeah. It sounds like it makes perfect sense to me with the minimal understanding I have around those adverse experiences you have as a child, and what that then, how that forms your belief systems and your habits and behaviours.
Yeah, so the smallest bit of resistance, I'll be like, oh, no, I better not say anything. And that's sort of been my go-to response throughout my life. And part of the sober journey, and part of trying to evolve as a person and get well, has been looking at that and improving upon that. And I think this is why I really wanted to talk about my eyes today, because it's been such, a pivotal part of my landscape when it came to the way that I react to life. And the difference in the last 3 years has been extraordinary, because I'm now able to talk about it. And being able to talk about that means that I can suddenly talk about everything else.
Yes.
I used to have people say I gave them the gift of brevity when it came to, sharing my stuff. There wasn't much there.
Yeah, and yet there really was so much there.
Yep.
Well, I'm so grateful that you're talking about it now. I'm beyond grateful that you chose to use this show and this platform as a way to share your story, because I believe that if one other person is listening along right now and they have had that same experience, the identification that they're receiving right now, the impact that you are going to have on them is life-changing.
Yeah. Look, I've never sat down and spoken about it like this. I've written about it and I've told people about it here and there, but to have this conversation, I wasn't sure how it would go. I was like, will I freeze? Will I describe it? Because how do you describe being stabbed in the eye by something that's like 10 meters away?
Yeah.
But it's like, and people might be listening thinking it's crazy, and that's okay. I think it was crazy too, but it's...
I don't think so, though. I think you've explained it in such a way that it actually makes perfect sense.
I mean, not to put too much of a dramatic thing, it is literally like, it's like resting against my eyeball and just poking in towards the retina. And that's what it feels like as soon as I get instant sight on something. Yeah. That's what it feels like, and it's like that.
It's just nowhere to live.
Yeah, and that's just it. That's just it. And I know I'm not alone here, and so I've met so many people on my journey who put up with stuff that they don't need to put up with.
Yeah.
We can't always change it. We can't always cure it. But this idea that we have to sit there and just take it.
Yeah.
There's only one word that describes that, and it's called shame. And the best definition of shame I ever heard was a feeling of less than. Say no more. Why else would you stay silent?
Yeah. Wow. Ryan, far out. I'm just in all the feels right now. I can't thank you enough. We have one final question that we finish up with on the show.
Okay.
It's a question that I ask every guest who joins me here.
Yep.
And that question is, what are your 3 non-negotiables that allow you to live your life today, stepping out from behind the smile, happy, authentic, and free?
3 non-negotiables. Well, the first is I don't drink.
Yes.
That's a 100% non-negotiable.
Almost 20 years. How crazy is that?
Yeah, that's the first. The second is trying to be true to myself. That's, it's a work in progress, but it's a non-negotiable. If it's between that and something that isn't me, then I have to go with me all the time. And so that's the second one. A third one. I don't know. What's the third one? Does everyone come up with 3?
Oh, yeah. Take your time.
I don't know. I mean, I
time
guess...
with Basil?
Oh, Basil's beautiful. My little cat. Yeah, he's great. No, that's a non-negotiable for sure. But look, I think for me, non-negotiable, if I was to say this, is if I was to meet someone, for instance, or the kind of people I would want in my life, the non-negotiable is calming and reassuring. That's what I try to put out there myself, and I've found myself working in little aged care and now in mental health, and that's sort of been naturally what I just do without. I think I just do that because that's what I always wanted, just to have someone calm me and say, hey, what you're feeling, it's okay. And I think having people around me who, live that is a non-negotiable. Like I need people in my life that I can trust like that.
How beautiful. I think it's so true what you put out. It's that idea of karma and then receiving it back and attracting that tribe through your own energy. It's so powerful.
And going on to what we were talking about earlier, where, the kind of people I'd attract would be, those that would want take, and I need to emotionally regulate them. And so that non-negotiable now is saying, like, if I'm going to spend significant time with you, then it's got to be an energy that, that calms me.
For sure.
That, it's not just about what I'm, what I'm doing for you. It's got to be something that calms and encourages and reassures.
And that's only something that you can really do once you have enough self-worth and self-esteem to know that you deserve that.
Yes. And to get to that point,
it's taken a whole lot of work.
Well, it's the old thing. It's when I got sober, if I knew how much work there was to do, if I knew how unwell I was, there's no way I'm going on that journey. There's no way. But what I love about life and the consciousness is that we see only what we can deal with at any given time, So
100%.
And then we deal with it, and then we think, yay, or I'm over this, and no, I'm not.
And then the universe is like, and now you're ready for this one.
So it's just deeper and deeper and deeper. But so those three non-negotiables. Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
No problem.
We say here on Behind the Smile that when we recover loudly, no one need suffer in silence, and I think your story is such a testament to that. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I know, right? The perfect ending to the show. Thank you again so much for being here, Ryan. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks, Ash.